The NHL shifts its focus to the offseason as the Hockey Hall of Fame will welcome in a new class. Hey everyone, welcome into Off the Post. Rob Wong, joined alongside by Toronto Sun sports columnist Steve Simmons, Canucks reporter for the Vancouver Sun and the Province Patrick Johnston, and Postmedia hockey columnist Bruce Garriock. And guys, two of us on this panel were right. The Florida Panthers taking Game 7, winning the Stanley Cup. Patrick one of them, myself the other, as the Panthers denied the country of Canada a Stanley Cup winner yet again. But as we look at this Panthers team moving forward, Bruce, it's 2 straight finals appearances with 1 win. They've got a lot of core pieces in their primes locked up, but others do need new deals. Is this, however, setting up to be the team to beat in the NHL over the next 4 to 5 years?
I think it's really, really difficult to have a dynasty in this day and age because of the salary cap, and it's tough to keep a team together. I think as much as everybody enjoyed the Florida Panthers and making the Stanley Cup final, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to not make some changes. Sergei Bobrovsky's got to come back next season and have the kind of year he did again. I don't know if that can happen. I kind of look at it right now as, you know what, just enjoy the fact they won. And, as Dennis Green would say, if you want to crown their ass, go ahead. But I wouldn't be ready to crown them right now. And that's the late Dennis Green, by the way. I wouldn't be ready to crown them as a dynasty right at the moment.
What people don't realize is how hard it is to play the way the Florida Panthers play. I mean, it is a real commitment to make, to play that way all year long, to play that way through 4 rounds of playoffs. And once this summer comes and those guys are partying with the Stanley Cup and the party's already started on the beach and at the Elbow Room and everywhere else, I think it's extraordinarily difficult to repeat the way they play and the style of play, and to not have an A superstar kind of scoring forward and an A superstar kind of scoring defenseman. I think that's going to be a challenge for that group to come back. Last year they had the goal. They almost got there. They got to the finals. They weren't really a factor in the final, and they got beaten up. This year they got through it. They almost lost their way in 4, 5, and 6. They almost did, and they found their way back in time for 7 to salvage the whole thing. But to come back and do it again in an NHL where there's Vegas and Dallas and Edmonton and Rangers and Carolina, and then who knows who else. There's a lot of good teams in this league. Winning year to year is a challenge, let alone talking. We always talk dynasty when somebody wins, and they never come back with them.
The third reason in all this is the pure and simple roster construction challenge of this. Yes, the Panthers have Barkov and Tkachuk signed for a very long time, and they're your 2 best players, and that's really important. But, after this season, Sam Bennett's going to need a new deal. Carter Verhaeghe's going to need a new deal. Anton Lundell is an RFA. That you can keep him under control for a couple of years, but he'll need a new big deal in a couple of years. You're looking at the likes of Sam Reinhart, who needs a big deal right now. Bobrovsky's contract is a big challenge in the moment, and he's got to perform for 2 more years this way. But you look at the way that defense is locked in. I mean, the good thing is Gustav Forsling's great value there, but Ekblad's going to need a new deal next year. Oliver Ekman-Larsson will probably get himself a raise. We'll see if he's even back in Florida next year. I mean, the challenges of building in the cap era are so strong. The Panthers are well positioned, but they're going to have to make some hard decisions. We've already talked about Leon Draisaitl on here and what the Oilers are going to have to decide to do. The Panthers have it right in front of them right now.
Yeah, a lot of difficult challenges through this offseason, you would think, for the Panthers as they try to bring back a lot of these UFAs. Meanwhile, a lot of other things going on in the hockey world, including the Hockey Hall of Fame announcing their class of 2024. And Pavel Datsyuk, Jeremy Roenick, Shea Weber, Natalie Darwitz, and Chrissy Wendell-Pohl going in as players, while Colin Campbell and David Poyle will be the builders this year. Steve, any of those names surprising to you as far as this class goes?
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised by Jeremy Roenick, only because he's been passed over a few times, and I kind of thought he was on the S list, if you want to call it that, around the NHL. He lost his broadcast gig, and he was kind of in persona non grata, so I wasn't sure he was going to get it. I was really happy to see Datsuk get it because there was all been this talk through the Alexander Mogilny snubbing years of they're not putting Russians in. Well, Russia's at war. Well, that's been put to rest. And I was very, very happy to see both Shea Weber and David Poile get honored. Both really great careers, both guys who are a little bit understated unless you watch them and were with them all the time. And to me, I put my Hall of Famers in the column on Sunday. I had McGillney as one, I had Datsuk as one, and I had Curtis Joseph as my fourth player, and he doesn't seem to get a sniff either in all of this.
You know, it's interesting, Patrick. I was quite happy to see Colin Campbell and David Poile go into the builders category. I think they both deserve it. You know, I was also, I thought Datsuk was just a magical player. This may not be popular, but I was a little surprised that Shea Weber, quite frankly, was a first ballot Hall of Famer. I think that certainly that one could be up for discussion. There's two guys I'd like to see go in. One is I'd like to see go in is Alex Mogilny because I believe he deserves it, Patrick. And the other guy, because he was driving the golf cart yesterday, I thought it would have been a perfect day for Walt Tkachuk to go into the Hall of Fame. But
the players I didn't have any clue with. I've been a long time critic of Colin Campbell. I think I disagree with his choice. I think I don't get it. I look at there's guys around the game that should go in before him. Francois Allaire changed the way goaltending is played. You know, there's a guy that should be in there. If you're putting him in, we've already mentioned McGillney. We've already mentioned Curtis Joseph. Both those guys should be in. Patrick Eliash, like obviously you're not going to get everybody in every year, but there's a lot of people in who I have questions on. There's people on the outside that clearly you don't understand why they're in it. Jen Botterill, I mean, why is Jen Botterill in there? Why is there this limitation? If we're going to, if we're honoring all players, men and women, why are we only putting in one woman? There are things about the process that I have issues with. It makes the game feel small. It should be a great thing, and from far away, it just seems like a troublesome process. You look at how all the other sports do it and why it's such a small little group of people making the selections here. I don't know, but certainly the players I thought choice. David Poile is a great choice as well. Nothing's perfect. I get it, but I think there's the Hockey Hall of Fame process can be better. I think.
I want to go back to Weber for just a second, because I've never understood the notion of he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer. Well, I think if you're a Hall of Famer, you're a Hall of Famer, whether it's first time, second time, third time, doesn't matter. If you talk to Eric Lindros today and you say, are you in the Hall of Fame? He'll say yes. Does it matter that he got passed over 10 or 11 times before he got there? Probably to him it does, but to the world it doesn't. He's a Hall of Famer. Shea Weber played in the NHL from, I think it's about 14 or 15 years. Bruce, do you know who the leading goal scorer among defensemen was in his years in the NHL?
Well, you're setting me up.
He's a defensive defenseman in my mind.
But I was going to take a wild guess and say Shea Weber.
But you wouldn't think that, right? He's not considered to be an offensive guy. He had the most goals in his time in the NHL. I looked that up today. And he was a guy you didn't want to go in the corner with him. You talk to players. You didn't want to go behind the net with him. You didn't want to go against the boards with him. You didn't want to stand in front of the net the way Zach Hyman does with Shea Weber around. He made you pay. And I think for those are things you can't always measure to go along with the goals that you can. I think it's a fascinating combination. On the Team Canada's he played on, if he wasn't the best defenseman, he was the second best. And if you're the best or second best defenseman for Canada at big events, to me, Hall of Fame is a certainty, and it was for him.
Named an All-Star 4 times at the end of the season, double digits in goals in 11 seasons, Steve, 3 times over 20 goals. And you're right. I mean, we think of this hard-edged, tough guy, but the offensive game and obviously playing in the West, we saw a lot of him. I had no quibble with him whatsoever. And Roenick is actually kind of the funniest one. I mean, I think of him as being a top player. He was never a top 5 scorer in the league, but he scored 1,200 points, and he scored a lot of those points for a really tough time in the NHL. I think personality-wise, he probably deserves to be there. I had no real issue with any of the players selected. Like I said, I think in the end, and I agree with you, Steve. The idea of first ballot. I mean, like you're in or you're not. Like that's the thing I don't get. What are we worried about? Like let's get some of these people in that we've been waiting on.
With poor Alex McGillney, who has more goals per game than
ridiculous.
Sakic and Yzerman, and you can run through a whole Sundin and Sittler and a lot of guys, and he's 15 times, no look contendere, if you want to call it that.
Yeah,
it's a pretty amazing thing. I just want to touch on Roenick for 1 second, because everyone gets caught up in numbers and stats and analytics and everything else. Sometimes the eye test is a wonderful thing. I covered a playoff series in 1992 between the Blackhawks and the Maple Leafs. The two best players in the series by a mile were Doug Gilmour and Jeremy Roenick, and they played head-to-head. And on the nights Gilmour was the better guy, the Leafs won, and the nights Roenick was the better guy, the Blackhawks won. And it was brilliant to watch two artists perform under those circumstances. And when you see that up close, boy, I would have said then, and at that time Roenick was a 100-point guy, but I would have said then, this guy's Hall of Fame for sure.
All right. Lastly, guys, we saw some more goaltenders get moved over the last couple of weeks. I guess this is the time of the year where that type of thing happens. And Bruce, the Senators landing Linus Ullmark from the Boston Bruins in a deal. Ullmark, of course, part of that great tandem with Jeremy Swayman in Boston the last couple of years. The Senators tried it with Jonas Korpisalo. It didn't work. Is Ullmark potentially the savior, if you will, for the Senators in net?
Well, I said to someone the other day, Rob, he doesn't have to be a savior. He just has to make saves. And that is something that this team did not have last year. 22 times they gave up a goal on the first or second shot of the game. That they were able to unload Korpisalo's contract and only pick up 25% of it and bring in a goaltender who won a Vezina trophy last year, or 2 years ago, pardon me. I think that they've scored big here. I feel like this guy's going to stabilize the net. We just had a 25-minute Zoom call with Linus Ullmark, and he did his homework before he came here. He spoke to Anton Forsberg, who will be his backup, his former backup in junior, and he also spoke with former Senators captain Daniel Alfredsson, who's now an assistant coach on this club staff. He impressed me with what he said. His attitude impressed me, and he said he's not bringing the goalie hug he shared with Jeremy Swayman to Ottawa. He's going to find a new tradition with Forsberg, but they hope to be able to enact that tradition a lot to help get this team back to the playoffs. I think this is a good move.
You know what baffles me? You know what baffles me in all this? The Boston Bruins. The Boston Bruins had Ullmark and Swayman, maybe the best 1-2 in the NHL. And I'm not saying they gave him away to Ottawa, but they sure didn't get a lot back that you can tangibly put on their team and say they're now a better hockey team. Well, they're not. And so why trade your goalie, if he's as good as they think he is or we think he is, to a team in your division? I don't understand that. I don't understand the logic of that. And I don't understand the logic, even at 25% off, taking Korpisalo, unless he returns to Columbus Korpisalo, which I guess is always possible with goalies. But having said that, why wouldn't they have sent him to the Western Conference? I just am baffled by the Boston Bruins in this arrangement.
The thing I will say about that Senators fans should look at, and not look at Ullmark's performance in Boston, it was fantastic, it was how good he was in Buffalo in a not very good lineup. He played well. He was a strong goalie for a not very good Sabres team. The guy can play. There's just absolutely no doubt about it. He's going to make the Senators crease better, and I will be shocked if that continues to be a problem for the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah. By the way, do you remember when Matt Murray won 2 Stanley Cups and then went to Ottawa to solve all their goaltending problems?
I do remember that.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's been a while.
Did you go to Toronto too, Steve?
Yes. It's been a while.
Didn't you go to Toronto too?
And now he's on Robida Island.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think ultimately, though, Bruce has to get some T-shirts made. I believe you don't have to be the savior. You just got to make saves. Should be a T-shirt that's printed. You got to trademark that, Bruce. You got to get on that. I would definitely wear one here on the show.
All right, that'll do it for it.
That's true. We got to get some of the cuts for making this go public. But as always, leave your thoughts in the comment section below. For Steve Simmons, Patrick Johnston, and Bruce Garriock, I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.